So earlier this morning, Nintendo had their Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, and I ended up catching it live. I woke up a little bit earlier than I usually do just to catch it, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to just kind of go over some of the stuff that came up in it, because I've seen a lot of discussion. I was with a lot of people discussing it today, and this isn't really like a full reaction, so if you're looking for a reaction to the Direct, this is not it. That's just not the kind of thing I do really anymore. But I did want to cover a couple things that I did see that came up in the Direct. And I just want to talk about some various things and just, do whatever. So the first thing is obviously the first party games. Nintendo showed off the new Mario Kart World, as well as the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Prime 4, Metroid Prime 4, and then a new Donkey Kong game. All of which looked fantastic and are definitely going to be games I'm going to be picking up. It's been a long time since I've played any of the Metroid Primes. I've played a bit of the Prime 1 remaster when that came out, but didn't actually finish it, admittedly. I probably should go back and do that at some point. Especially with this one coming up, I probably should at least revisit the series before it comes out. But I just didn't finish the remaster when that came out. A new Donkey Kong game. This is the first 3D Donkey Kong game since, I think, Donkey Kong 64. 3D open world adventure one. There's been other Donkey Kong games, obviously, but the last time it was like a 3D open adventure game, I'm pretty sure was Donkey Kong 64. And then, of course, Mario Kart World. It looks fantastic with all of the things you can do. The racetracks just going into each other, I think, is going to be really exciting. It's definitely going to have a lot of shoes to fill because of the sales of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It's gonna be, it's definitely gonna be tricky for Mario Kart World to match those sales numbers, especially with something we'll get into later. The other big thing that I noticed for me personally was the GameCube Classics. Now, they did announce that the Nintendo Switch Online, like the NES and Super Nintendo and whatever, they're actually renaming them to Nintendo Classics. So it's Nintendo Classics GameCube. They revealed that, which is really exciting because this is actually something that people have been asking for since the Wii U, that they actually just have some GameCube games playable. And I guess you could argue that some were. They did have, Prime Trilogy was on Wii U, so you could argue that there was some GameCube games playable on the Wii U. But the idea of a GameCube being playable on the Switch 2 is really exciting. It's probably going to use the same sort of technology that the Super Mario 3D All-Stars used for that, specifically Mario Sunshine, because they also did mention in there that it's have enhanced visuals and looks better than the original game did, so it's probably going to use some of the same technology developed for 3D All-Stars. The only gripe that I have with it is that the lineup is only 3 games. Wind Waker, F-Zero GX, and Soul Calibur 2 to launch with is, that's really sparse. They did show off a lot of upcoming games and a lot of really good games, like Chibi Robo is coming, Pokemon Colosseum and XD, games that cost a lot on the secondhand market right now. Nintendo is just giving the middle finger to them and being like, nope, I will make this accessible. And it's actually one of the things I feel like they don't get a lot of praise for when it comes to the NSO offerings, is quite a few of them are games that are not cheap. They aren't accessible easily on the secondhand market. It's just that a lot of people want, the well-known stuff. So some of the more obscure things that a cartridge is like $300 for, people don't really care about, and that's whatever. But for the launch to just be 3 games is it's a little sparse. Also, there are a good selection of games, but I'm surprised Mario Sunshine isn't releasing at launch, but it did show that it's coming at some point. The NSO GameCube controller is definitely going to be good, but I imagine most people, if they already have the GameCube controller that came with Smash like I do, they're probably just going to use the GameCube adapter and just stick with that instead of dropping more money on another GameCube controller. But there are probably still going to be people that do it anyway. Another thing is, after the Direct, it wasn't actually mentioned in there, but following the Direct, there was the Nintendo, or the My Nintendo store. They started allowing people to register to get pre-orders from Nintendo directly, which is actually a really cool system, and it's something that I see a lot of people on the internet wishing that Sony had done that with the PlayStation 5. So with Nintendo, you can get the pre-orders directly from Nintendo. You have to register your interest with it, and then you have to meet some requirements. with it being like you have to have paid for a year's worth of Nintendo Switch Online membership, and then have at least 50 hours of played game time. Now, this is obviously to deter scalpers, people that just want to buy as many of these units as possible. This is basically making it to where if you want to be a scalper for this, you have to put in some real time into it. And at this point, I think all that time had to be before today. So people can't now rack up that time. It had to have been up until today. So a year ago of NSO back from before today, and then 50 hours before today. So I meet that pretty easily, but also other retailers like GameStop here in the US announced that they're taking pre-orders on April 9th. I saw a retailer in the UK is taking pre-orders on April 8th. So there's definitely other companies that are going to be taking pre-orders before Nintendo, because the My Nintendo store said that the first batch of requests are being sent out May 8th. But the way I see it is Nintendo's ones are more of like a way for you to secure a spot. So if you're like me, who are probably still going to try to get it from like GameStop or Best Buy or Amazon, and you get beat by the bots and the scalpers, as long as Nintendo deems you worthy enough, I guess, they don't really specify who gets what. I'm not sure if everybody's guaranteed when they show the interest, but my assumption is that, you know, you're probably going to get a spot if you're a longtime NSO user and use the Switch often enough. So for me, I'm definitely going to be trying to pre-order before May 8th when Nintendo sends out their requests. But if you're unlucky or a ton of people beat you to it, it's a way for you to have like a second chance, essentially. So I've definitely still registered my interest with Nintendo to get it directly from them. The only thing that kind of sucks is they had like a fine print that says that release date shipping is not guaranteed, which is understandable. But I guess most retailers aren't doing it either, because in recent times I've had very poor luck when it came to getting things on release day from companies like GameStop or Best Buy. So will I get the Switch 2 on launch? I don't know. I may have to just go into a physical store and do it that way. I'm not far from one, so it's definitely doable. Another interesting thing is they announced the virtual game cards, and this was sort of shown off in the Direct, where they show the Switch 2 game cards and how they're different from the Switch 1, but on Nintendo's website after the fact, they revealed some information regarding that there's going to be apparently some game cards that don't actually contain the full game, and instead is a cartridge that has a bit of the game data, as well as a digital license key to download the rest, which is concerning. I've seen a lot of people claiming this is obviously for developers that don't want to fit the whole game on a cartridge, which we have seen. There are physical Switch games being sold that just have a digital download code in them. So people are thinking, oh, this is probably just another, like an evolution of that, where Nintendo is saying like, hey, you can't just use a case and a code anymore. You have to provide a card, which in this case only really benefits Nintendo because they make money off the manufacturing of those cards. So if this is a push from Nintendo where a download code in a physical case is no longer allowed and you have to have a card, all this is doing is benefiting Nintendo. So they're just making more money off the people that want to be stingy like this. Developers like, I think EA is pretty notorious for it, with all their games mostly just being download codes because they're massive games. They don't want to pay for the cartridges. So Nintendo's now basically forcing these developers to pay for these cartridges. And so we don't know what extent that is. The assumption is that it's for games like that are going to be either larger, or companies that wanted to use digital download codes in physical cases, where now they're being forced to still have a card. And that brings us to the last thing I want to touch on today, and the most hot button topic of the whole thing, and that is pricing. The Nintendo Switch 2 itself starts at $450, which a lot of people I see say that that's pretty fair. And I agree. I think based off the specs and the performance and all the things it can do, I say $450 is fair. A system that can do 4K 60 or 1080p 120 and has the new Joy-Cons that have mouse controls and all these extra things. The Switch has a built-in microphone, has all this stuff. $450. That's fine. They can charge what they want for the console. The concern is the game price. They showed off that Mario Kart World, and this was after the Direct, this wasn't in the Direct itself, but Mario Kart World is going to be $80, which is a big concern that a lot of people have. Back when Nintendo released Tears of the Kingdom and it was $70, people were thinking, oh, well, surely now Nintendo games are going to be all $70. In which case Nintendo tried to say like, oh no, this is just a one-time thing where we value the game at $70. Fine. The whole industry at that point had been doing it for a while, so they can do what they want. And I even remember back when the Switch came out, people were expecting Switch games to be more expensive because Nintendo went back to cartridges. And so the manufacturing cost of the cartridges were going to make the games more expensive. But no, they kept $60 games. Well, now it seems like Mario Kart World is $80 unless you buy it with the Switch 2 bundle, in which case you get it for $50, which is pretty good. And I assume most people are going to go with the bundle instead of just getting it standalone. What is weird is that other games like the new Donkey Kong game is $70. So is it a case of Mario Kart World is being valued higher and being sold as $80 because Nintendo themselves, much like they did with Tears of the Kingdom, they just kind of value the game more and think it's worth more money? Or is it Nintendo trying to test the waters for, oh, well, the games will actually be $80 or so on? And there's also reports that the physical copies of Switch games are $10 more expensive. So a physical copy of Mario Kart World is apparently $90, or at least I saw a listing that said in the UK it would be the equivalent of $90 US. That's insane. I'm completely I'm shocked that they actually would do something like that. And this is actually kind of concerning because now it makes me wonder about all those reports of supposedly GTA 6 is going to cost $100 per copy, and people are like, oh, there's no way they would charge that much for a game. And now here Nintendo is showing a game where it's $80 to $90, and now I just see memes of people like, oh, well, Rockstar's probably, rubbing their hands together like, ooh, thank you, Nintendo. Now if a bunch of people buy this game, it'll show that we can get away with it. Rockstar was going to get away with it anyway, let's be real. But it's definitely concerning, and I do understand a lot of people's concern and that they are against the idea that it's that expensive. And I don't blame them. It is a lot of money. For a lot of people, especially kids, convincing your parents to drop $80 on a video game is tough. I remember as a kid trying to convince my parents to drop $40 on a game was tough. And then now with modern games becoming $70 as default, I imagine kids these days already still have a bit of trouble convincing parents to drop the money for games. Now here Nintendo is raising it even more. It's definitely concerning. I definitely get people's outrage towards it. I too am a little upset at the cost, but my hope is that Mario Kart 8 is just an example of with Tears of the Kingdom, where the game itself is going to be a little bit more expensive because they value the game more expensive. Because their other first-party game, the Donkey Kong game, isn't $80. So do they value it less? Or is Mario Kart World's price just a testing ground? Who knows? I hope that going forward, their big, huge titles like the next 3D Mario, the next Zelda game, aren't going to be another testing ground where they're also $80. But, let's be real, they're probably going to be $80. So those are the main things that I wanted to touch on. I'm definitely going to be getting a Switch 2. I'm definitely going to get the new Pro Controller. It's definitely stuff I'm going to pick up immediately. So I'm definitely excited for it. The pricing for the console I think is fair. Like I said, the games I'm a bit more skeptical of. I own an Xbox Series S and a PS5, and I don't think I've bought either of those, any game for those consoles at full retail price. So I feel with the Switch 2, if games are going to be $80 to $70 to maybe even $90, it's probably just going to result in me buying less games. And I'm probably just going to be more picky about what I buy because I'm not really keen on spending that kind of money, even if I have the money to do so. Just dropping $80 on a video game, that's a tough ask. That's a tough ask for someone like me who's 30. Tried convincing little Timmy to try to get his parents to do that. So I think you want to So I thank everybody who watched this all the way through. If you did enjoy it, let me know. Leave a comment on what you thought of the Direct, what you thought of the things that I mentioned. Are you still going to buy one? I imagine most people probably still going to. I think it's still going to sell really well. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do so. I plan to make other random videos, just whatever comes to my mind. I do have another one thought up that I'm going to do pretty soon. And I do want to thank my YouTube member, Cog777, for showing support for so long. It's much appreciated. But yeah, with that, I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.